Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. I'm your host Nicholas Kianda, and I'll be summarizing the 2025 October issue of the magazine. And this is what we've been working on for a while now, where we get you the magazine and we summarize it in audio format. For those of you who have a little bit less time on your hands, who may not be interested in written text. Once again, I've been your host, Nicholas Kanda, and I'm glad to be a part of this. For this October 2025 issue, we continued a piece by Noah Smith on the elite overproduction hypothesis. We also shared our Founders Freedom supplement. We went into bits and pieces from the MTN annual report. We also attempted to put together a VC course by the use of artificial intelligence. As usual, we have our Faith Matters section, our notice board, as well as our book recommendation. The cover photo for our magazine was taken from Unsplash, and it is the work of Tobias Reich. Once again, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing. So for the first piece of advert that we have in the magazine is usually just talking about our web design, web hosting services. You can host with us for a reasonable price, and then of course you can also have our help in designing. The services sometimes differ. People will come to us and say, hey, I already have a host, I just need you to design this for me using WordPress or whatever services we have in our control panel. So we also do that. The reason why we do hosting and design at the same time is we want people to learn how to do both, because you can make a decent amount of money doing both. And so for that service, I recommend, as was recommended to me almost 15 years ago, that you use the resellers panel. This is not a paid ad. It's just one of those things that I think I have found useful and valuable over time. Another thing that we think was really critical to mention is, and I think I've tried to do it with the cover, is we don't give enough credit to those who have contributed to the content we're producing. So that's why we wanted to mention Tobias Reich and Unsplash.com for helping supply covers, or at least giving me some ideas about what to use for my covers for the magazine. So Unsplash.com, thank you very much. And then for the October 2025 issue, Tobias Reich is a person to follow. Now, in the previous episode of summary, I mentioned my definition of the elite overproduction hypothesis. So I think that actually pretty much summarizes everything that I've been trying to say, that I think is important for us to understand. He says, I repeat, the excess of individuals aspiring to elite status can lead to social instability and conflict. Now, in the last issue, I was talking about how humanities courses struggled, talking about English, history, philosophy, religion, and a few others. And he gave the definitions why this was the case. But he also goes on to handle other types of courses in the same category. He gives you different tables or graphs representing these courses. There's also a piece by a small tweet by Benjamin Schmidt, which talks about the major drops in English, literature, and other languages as well. Then he makes a connection between the decline in these courses. I suppose he called it the disappointment that many faced having seen this decline take place. He goes back a little bit into history, trying to explain why this was the case. He talks about Latin America. So it's interesting to see how these relationships between the Americas also spilled into countries in South America. So they not only affected people in America, but they also affected those in Latin America. I'm not too sure about these effects in places like Africa, but if we are having a good number of population training or going to study in the US or in Europe, and you have these changes taking place in the US, and the economy in the US affecting other economies, then naturally would be affected too. The other thing I think that's important to understand is that when people go through this university courses, they're usually paying quite a lot of money, and so there's also the subject of debt that has to be handled. And so if you're already in debt and you're going through a course and you think you're going to be successful, and the success doesn't come when you want it to come, then you have two problems. One is that you're graduating with a course that's not going to be useful, but two, you're graduating with a debt. And if you had come into an economy that was welcoming, then you could pay back your debt quicker if you got into the job that you wanted to get into. So these effects cut across all sorts of sectors, they cut across all sorts of economies and countries, both in the north and the southern hemispheres. Peace, of course, between talking about strategy, governance, offering a business growth roadmap, breakdown of the services offered by Founders Freedom from preparation to assessment to recommendation to the business growth map are all presented here. Those are their services. Board formation, your government needs assessment, your profiling for the board, as well as the board induction. Those are all services offered by Founders Freedom. Now, we've also put together costs for advertising our magazine. Our costs are rather low, but we hope to achieve or to break even, depending on the number of subscribers we can get in the magazine, either for subscriptions of the magazine as well as for the podcast, as well as those who advertise in the magazine. We've combined the services of both podcasts onto one, so that we can have a better reach, capturing those who are of the religious faith, which we subscribe to, and others, as well as those who are into technology and innovation with the Intersection Magazine podcast. Our web design and host costs are also available. Of course, these costs are not completely static, but they're dynamic, which means we're open to discussion. Our 2 books are also available. These are books written by my late father, which you can access for a small cost. We've put the costs into later issues of the magazine, but this was just after quite a lot of discussion. One of the things that we do under Hope First Media is we have a service that gets good drawings, even if they're in color, and they have well done drawings. Then we convert those into monochrome, and then we use a computer to square centimeter or square inch by square inch, creating a monochrome image that is usually very attractive. So that's also on our notice board. If you like what you see, you can get in touch with us at nkdragoncrane.com. Or the MTN magazine overview, we just pretty much wanted to go through, identify some key points from that group. So what I did was I basically went through the magazine, the annual report, the key areas that I think were important in the presentation, and use those areas to put together a summary that I think you will find useful. As I said in the piece which I published, the key word for the MTN 2024 annual report is the word value. They talked about financial value, they talked about value created, they talked about value aspiration, value accountability, value strategy, protecting value through governance, and then creating social value. So just at a glance, the key word is value. You can read a lot more about more insights into that. In movie section, or from the reel section, I talked about similarities between Waterfront and the Ozarks. There was a comparison online about how the Waterfront was a little bit similar to the Ozarks, but my argument was it really isn't. So you can read what I wrote about that in that piece. Now, for a comprehensive venture capital course, I asked artificial intelligence for some help with that, which artificial intelligence did. And so I've summarized the key parts of what I think a decent venture capital course should be about. The tool was really good. I think I used ChatGPT for the question. So it gave me a course overview, it gave me historical issues, it gave me case studies, even gave me the option of getting a presentation that I could use to teach, or slides that I could use to teach. So I think it did rather a good job with getting me that information. All this was done because I wanted to be able to be in a position where I could teach myself some of these things. So that's why I did this. For those who are interested, it suggests a history of VC, fund structures and mechanisms, deal flow and deal sourcing, financial modeling, legal considerations, cap tables and term sheets, unit economics, due diligence, investment thesis development, exits and acquisitions, models and trends in VC. So for my book, or the book or recommendation, I found an interesting author called Vijay Rajendran. His book is called The Founding Framework. I was able to purchase the book in digital format on Amazon, and so I summarized the book. I've gone through it twice now, the audio version of the book, and I'm going to keep going through it the more time I get. It's a book that I highly recommend for its usefulness. He splits it into 4 primary areas, which is storytelling, organization, outreach, and closing, and he also make sure that he gives you a glossary that will help you understand the big or complex terms that those in the investment space will use. So he doesn't keep you outside of this knowledge base or group that many people like to protect, but he gives you useful tools to help you navigate the space. The other thing I really like about his book is that he uses practical examples of people that have actually found themselves in these particular situations. So every chapter almost has a story of a person who goes through a circumstance or situation and how that plays into the overall chapter of that book. We also have a section on monetizing Instagram. As I told you before, we first dealt with monetizing LinkedIn, so now we deal with monetizing Instagram. Those interested in baking or computer studies can get in touch with us. So there's a piece with that, or like a page devoted to that. And then 4 sections or four past issues are also available. There's a poem section. I wanted to focus mainly on just homes, verses in the Bible that talk about houses and homes. And then for a restaurant review or the description of what we're working on, I wanted to highlight a collaboration between a church and Hope First Bakeries or myself. We've been trying to collaborate and teach some simple basic baking skills to young children in the neighborhood. So we're thankful for that as well. So that's basically the month of October 2025. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. We look forward to giving you more content.
Intersection. Intersection Magazine Podcast.